What is up, RotoGrinders? We are here for another edition of FanDuel Friday, talking some NBA. My name is TJ Zwarych. You can find me on the socials, TJ_Zwarych5. And I'm joined today by Justin Carlucci, the Luuch. How are you doing?
What's up? Another Friday here, and massive slate, tons of pending news, a lot of high game totals. Should be a fun one.
We got craziness today. I was basically just going to repeat the exact same thing you said, and it's just we got Q tags all over the place. We got guys already ruled out, tons of games, tons of really, really high totals in this one, fast-paced matchups, some games with not a lot of defense, and just so many people with missing bodies in this one. Like always, we're not going to be totally going game by game, but we are going to be highlighting a few of them specifically. If there's one that we don't cover that you're fond of, it's such a big slate, that's definitely going to be possible. It's not necessarily going to be a problem for tournaments, but we're going to go through the big injury spots, talk some what ifs, and kind of go through our favorite spots on this slate. We might as well just start right at 7 o'clock here. Washington already has Bradley Beal out facing this New York team at home, and they have Kuzma questionable, Gafford questionable, Monty Morris questionable. Kyle Kuzma is the only guy in here without a Q tag. Him, Hachimura, Denny Avdia, all of these guys are potentially going to be looking interesting today. And if we have Monty Morris out for this one, Jordan Goodwin all of a sudden is going to be looking like an absolute smash on this play as well. You interested in running it back with anybody on the New York side? And where does Washington going to stand for you in tournaments? Obviously, if all these guys are in, we're not going to pay much attention. But let's just imagine right now all of them are going to be out. And we don't have to spend too much time here because we're going to get this news before lock. But where would these guys rank on your priority list if, say, those three all happen to be out?
Probably pretty low, to be honest with you. This is a huge slate, and this is a really low total. Both teams play slow, decent defense. Kuzma's disappointed, and I understand. I know he could be in a really nice high usage bump spot. I don't know if this is the place I want to target him or not. The Knicks side, things get a little more complicated with RJ Barrett coming back with no restrictions. So we saw a clear cut into the usage of Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson. Randle's not 9K anymore, and Brunson's not 7K anymore. So this game, I don't know how interested I'll be unless some serious chaos breaks on the Washington side.
Yeah, I don't think I have much interest in New York, and on the Washington side, the player I'd be most interested in if we get those guys ruled out would be Denny Avdia. Anytime he's playing mid-30s minutes, he seems to be putting up a pretty big score. And then I'd want to see how our projection lays out here for DeLon Wright and Jordan Goodwin, see which one of these guys ends up in the starting lineup. Maybe even it could be both of them. So somewhat interesting, but like we said, we're going to know more about that before lock. Let's pivot over to this other 7 o'clock game quick. New Orleans has a phenomenal matchup against Detroit, 120-point total. Still no Brandon Ingram, still no Zion Williamson. Herbert Jones is listed as questionable in this one. Larry Nance is back. CJ McCollum has incredibly high upside. Jonas Valanciunas has incredibly high upside. Both of those are going to be strong tournament plays today. Detroit's missing a ton of bodies, but they're starting to get priced up for those bodies that they're missing a little bit. So a guy like Jaden Ivey and a Bojan Bogdanovic, I don't mind, but these are really just tournament flyers. The one that we got to spend a lot of time on here, I think, is Atlanta and Indiana. Atlanta's coming in here mostly healthy outside of Clint Capella still being out, but Indiana is now missing Tyrese Halliburton. Miles Turner's questionable. Aaron Nesmith is questionable. Andrew Nembhard and TJ McConnell have somewhat been priced up for the situation, but definitely not enough. We're looking at 40% ownership for Nembhard and McConnell on this huge slate. How are you going to handle these two today?
Yeah, they got to be in your player pool. I don't know how aggressive I would be. Still a lot of other things need to unfold on this slate, but definitely have to play both of them. I mean, they have to be in your player pool. If you're playing, one lineup, I can't say to play them both together, but there are paths where you probably can at these prices.
And I
we need to
would.
we need to see who's in and who's out. That's for sure. Miles Turner being questionable could really open up things for Jalen Smith. This entire team is squarely in play. I think if this projected ownership is fairly accurate, Buddy Hield is being criminally undervalued. He has 50-point upside. So I think this is a case for me where I would take the Atlanta guys and set them as conditional players. So I have Atlanta guys only with Indiana guys because there is a chance this thing gets out of control. There's a chance. I know Atlanta's not fantastic, but when a team is really banged up, sometimes the chemistry is just not there and it could get ugly. So the high total and the tiny spread would imply otherwise, but you got to have basically all these Pacers in your player pool if you're running 100 lineups, in my opinion.
I would be setting a rule that I'd want to play 1 to 2 of Nembhard and McConnell in every lineup. Nembhard just went so crazy the last time that Halliburton was out, and McConnell did miss some of those games, but McConnell's a passer, Nembhard's a scorer. I think we could just end up seeing both of these guys go off today. If we happen to get Nesmith, Brissett, and Turner out, like Nesmith will play the 4, Brissett will play the 4 or 5. If Turner's out on top of those guys, all of a sudden the Jalen Smiths and the Isaiah Jacksons look phenomenal. If we really get like 8 available Pacers here, I would have 1 to 2 of McConnell and Nembhard in every lineup. I'd have 1 of Duarte, Mathurin, and Hield in every lineup. I'd have 1 of Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson in every lineup. Like, I would just be loading up on these guys, not caring at all if I get 3 to 4 of them. And if I got to run it back on the other side, I'm more than happy playing a 9,600 Trae Young, an 8,700 DeJounte Murray. If I'm running 150, I would include John Collins in there, even though he's 7K, and that's kind of scary. I don't really think I would get to much Okongwu or DeAndre Hunter at those price tags. But Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, and John Collins, I all see as people with really big ceilings that I would want to get to a lot of in this one.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe I wouldn't attach all of, I wouldn't want to attach my Pacers shares to Hawks, but I would want my Hawks shares to be attached to Pacers. So
yeah,
that's where I would stand with that game.
Something quick I want to touch on just in the next game. We're going to have an unowned Steph Curry at $9,300 that he could be ready to explode at any point here. Nobody's going to be playing him on a very big slate today. If you are playing him, running it back with, I think he's a way to run back a chalky Keldon Johnson on the other side, who is picking up a ton of ownership in a great spot for him in this one. Trey Jones is interesting as well, but I think if you're playing a chalky Keldon Johnson, using Steph as a run back is a very interesting thing you can do in tournaments here. Still no Chris Paul, still no Devin Booker for Phoenix. That really opens things up for Ayton, Bridges, Washington. All of these guys being interesting. Washington disappointed as chalk the other night, but I think you can go right back to him in tournaments today. And on the Minnesota side, this is the team we're going to have to spend a little more time talking about because they're already undermanned, and they got Anthony Edwards questionable, Kyle Anderson questionable, Taurean Prince questionable, leaving them with potentially very, very few players in this one. If Edwards is out, D'Angelo Russell is going to just be an absolute smash play. He might be dealing with some Mikal Bridges defense, which is a little scary, but he's still going to be in a great spot here. Rudy Gobert would be in an interesting position, but I don't know how much his usage is ever really going to go up. Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, Jalen Noel, these guys I think could all become very interesting if we're missing Edwards, Anderson, and or Prince.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points. I don't mind the Minnesota calls. I love the idea of getting a little bit of Steph Curry. I mean, he shot the ball 22 times in 31 minutes. And, maybe he plays 33, 34 minutes. Regardless, we've seen him score 2 fantasy points a minute before, and he could break the slate at 9,100, even if he only plays 30, 32 minutes against a team like the Spurs. The Spurs are bad. I don't know if Golden State's good enough to blow them out, though, TJ. I guess we will see. I guess if Curry goes nuclear, there's a chance that happens. But you said, hey, you can run it back if you think it's going to be close with Keldon Johnson, who's looking to carry some ownership as well.
I mean, either way, like this is a great tournament game stack because, yeah, maybe it doesn't stay close. And so that's your worry here. But there's going to be no defense played. Golden State's a bad defensive team. They're just getting Wiggins and Curry back from injury. That's not going to help. They're still going to be figuring stuff out here. And like San Antonio is obviously a horrific defensive team. And so if this game stays close, it's because Golden State's not playing any defense. We know Golden State's going to score. And so if this game's close, it's because Golden State's not playing any defense, and this ends up being a 130 to 128 game. And
Right.
so I do think this one makes for a very interesting game stack scenario. Another one that has some potential stackability is an 8 o'clock game, Chicago and OKC. Josh Giddey and SGA have just kind of been taking turns having big games lately. I don't think I'd want to play either of them together, but I'd be very interested in getting to both of them in tournaments. And on this Chicago side, there's no DeMar DeRozan. That's kind of why we have a lot of interest in this one. Vucevic and Zach LaVine are obviously the two highlights here. They're picking up heavy ownership. They're both very strong plays. But even somebody like Kobe White, Alex Caruso, Ayo Dosunmu, I think all of them are interesting values for tournaments, and all three of them are picking up the ownership to match. I don't think I'd want to play more than one of those three in a lineup. Maybe I'd even it's too big of a slate to include somebody like Goran Dragic. I'll just play somebody else that's not a bull if I'm not playing those guys. But I wouldn't want to play more than one of Caruso, Dosunmu, and White in a lineup. But I think all of them are interesting value spots on this slate.
Yeah, I agree. I like that build rule because I think you're going to need 30. You're going to need like 30 plus FanDuel points out of your 4K value guys tonight to take down a large field tournament.
And one of those three should. We just don't know which one it is.
Yeah, it's
White will get them if White will get there if he gets the minutes, and he'll only get the minutes if he's shooting the ball well. Caruso will get there if he's gets 2 steals and 2 blocks, which is very possible with Alex Caruso. I have a little more confidence in him and Dosunmu than I do Kobe White, just because Dosunmu and Caruso are both good defenders. Kobe White's not so much. And so I could really see Dosunmu and Caruso playing heavy minutes to kind of lock up Giddey and SGA. And then they'll probably just put Zach LaVine on Lou Dort. That's kind of how I see this laying out here. So I have a little more faith in Dosunmu and White, but White probably has the highest ceiling due to his ability to just get hot and put up a ton of threes.
I think what's kind of interesting about White is by default, looking at this roster, he would probably get the mop-up time too. So I think I would maybe run Kobe White teams without Zach LaVine or Vucevic. Yeah, White's going to play some meaningful minutes, but they're not going to roll Goran Dragic out up 20. Ayo's the starter. They're not going to play him up 20. Clearly, they value him more than Kobe White. So, I mean, you could get an extra 6 to 7 minutes out of Kobe White in the fourth quarter if it gets kind of ugly, and we can see a guy like him pop off for another 10-plus FanDuel points during that period, and maybe that's how he gets there.
You look at this two ways. How does Kobe White reach the ceiling? 1, a blowout and a couple extra minutes. 2, he shoots a bunch of threes and he's hot, which means it's probably not Zach LaVine scoring the points anyways. I love that. Make a rule that I want to get at least 15 to 20% Kobe White today, but have him be the only bull that I'm playing in that Kobe White lineup. I think that's kind of an interesting way to go about it. We got 3 more games on the slate that we haven't talked about. Orlando and Utah is a high total that's reasonably close, but outside of Kelly Olynyk being out, people are kind of, priced how they should be here. We got some Walker Kesslers and guys like that are okay plays. Orlando's finally starting to get everybody back here. There's some decent plays, but Houston and Sacramento, 2 teams that we always want to target because they don't play any defense and they play really fast. And guess what? They're playing against each other for the second time in a row, not second night in a row because there was a game off in the middle, but there was some fantasy goodness in this last one as well. Would have been even more if the game would have stayed closer. But on the Houston side, we got, so many guys that we can roll with here. No Kevin Porter Jr. in this one. So Jalen Green is just a absolutely phenomenal play. He's picking up the ownership, but at 7K, Jalen Green is just a stud play here. Alperen Şengün, he had a triple-double the last time these two teams played each other in only 28 minutes. Jabari Smith, Eric Gordon, Tari Eason, Jayshawn Tate, Kenyon Martin. You can take shots on all of these players in tournaments. wouldn't talk you off a single one of them. Maybe Eric Gordon at his ownership. Houston is just looking phenomenal here. And then on the Sacramento side, we still got Herter questionable. And we had Terrence Davis step into the starting lineup for him last game. Sabonis, Fox, Monk, Davis, Lyles, so much fantasy goodness in this game, Luuch.
Yeah, I tell you what, I don't know how Sabonis played 37 minutes and didn't record a steal or a block against this Houston team. He has easy 60-point upside. I mean, he played a really, really efficient game, shot 75% from the floor, but he wasn't even a high-volume shooting net for him. If the guy decides to play more of an alpha role and shoot 17, 18 times, we know he's going to rack up the peripherals. God forbid he gets a couple steals and blocks. Sabonis is just in a fantastic spot. Love the Jalen Green call. Don't love the ownership number at 7K, but I love the idea of pairing Jalen Green and Sabonis together and hoping this game pops off and it stays close.
Final game of the night. Two slower defensive teams, maybe not one that we'd want to spend too much time talking about normally. But for the Clippers, we already know, there's no Paul George tonight. There's no Reggie Jackson tonight. There's no Luke Kennard tonight. These guys are already pretty heavily undermanned, and so somebody like Kawhi looks pretty good. Norman Powell's got some upside. John Wall might step in there. Terrence Mann's playing the point guard position. He's looking pretty good. And on the Denver side, this is the big thing. Nikola Jokic is questionable. If he's out, Jamal Murray looks fantastic. Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter look a lot more interesting. Bruce Brown even looks more interesting. And we're going to get Zeke Naji stepping into the starting lineup because there's no DeAndre Jordan here. And Zeke Naji would all of a sudden look like arguably the best value play on the slate.
Yeah, obviously Jokic, the status of him is a big deal. I don't know when we're going to get that news. I don't know if we're going to get a weekend gift or not, but it's likely going to come after lock. And
makes you feel really good about putting a lot of Sacramento Houston players in your lineup.
It definitely does. The thing, Jamal Murray, right? It's not a great matchup. The fantasy point production hasn't shown without Jokic. If you toggle Jokic off the court, there isn't anything that blows you away. But he does get a 7% usage increase, which is a huge bump. So that is enough to lead me to believe that there is a ceiling game somewhere brewing in Jamal Murray if Jokic doesn't play. We might not have really seen it yet this season, but anytime someone has a 7% usage bump, you're going to have some anomaly games, and I think it could be tonight. And who knows, if that Jokic status is still questionable and we tip off 6 games, Jamal Murray is going to be under-owned if Jokic gets rolled out. So you're right. Strategy-wise, hey, play someone at the guard position at a similar price as Murray, and then make a decision. Heck, play a few guys from the Houston-Sacramento game. If you're playing 2 or 3 lineups, I would definitely stack some of these late games and have some availability to make some swaps like you alluded to.
Simple swap you could roll with. If you have a couple extra dollars, you could do something like, I have De'Aaron Fox and Kenyon Martin. Well, I'm now going to make that swap to Eric Gordon and Jamal Murray now that I know that Nikola Jokic is going to be out for this. And Eric Gordon, sorry, not Aaron Gordon, and Jamal Murray. Or if you're sitting there on a chalky Jalen Green, you make another pivot and you have Eric Gordon in your lineup, you pivot down to somebody like a Kenyon Martin and up to somebody like a Jamal Murray in that one. So there are, because of that other 10 p.m. game, there are going to be routes that you can make some swaps here. Obviously, we don't know what this is going to look like from a cash game standpoint tonight, just simply because we are waiting on so much news. As it stands right now, I think the highest priorities are TJ McConnell and Andrew Nembhard. After that, for me, it's probably in cash, Zach LaVine and Keldon Johnson with a Jalen Green as well. I want to make sure I have a few guys in there at the late game so I can swap to a Jamal Murray if he plays. But it's looking pretty, I think, straightforward with a couple of these guys looking great in the early games. And after that, us wanting to just wait until late. Before we get out of here, who are some of your favorite lower owned, like guys that you don't think are going to pick up a ton of ownership today for tournaments?
Let me see here.
I had a couple in mind that I'll roll with. Just I like that biggest one is that Denver situation, whether it's Murray and Zeke Naji, who would be two of the best plays on the slate, or Nikola Jokic, who literally no one is going to play, but we have the value to get to. Either one of those situations, I think, is very interesting. And I
This guy
also
doesn't
like
miss games either, so it's a very murky situation.
exactly. And like if the other way, I don't mind playing late and just like a center in that last slate of games that I like getting to quite a bit in tournaments is Şengün. Picking up below 15% ownership right now. Şengün is a guy that I really like to get to for tournaments. And the biggest thing for me is just going to be stacking that late last two games. That's going to be my favorite thing to do for tournaments. Alongside, I think, a guy like CJ McConnell.
I think the Stephen Curry call is very interesting on this slate. I think it makes the most.
I won't have the cojones to do that unless it's like if it's 150. If I'm building 150, I would get 10%, 5 to 10% step to make sure I'm way over the field. I just don't have the cojones for a one lineup to put him in there.
I think from a strategic ceiling standpoint and from a slate specific perspective, with all the chalk in Indiana, I think it makes the most sense to get overweight on Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, John Collins. I know Okongwu will carry some ownership, but I would just set those guys as conditional players because, man, if that game pops off and all the chalk is going crazy and God forbid that game goes to overtime or maybe the over crushes, there's not going to be much defense played in that game either. But that goes for both sides. So although everyone is healthy and everyone on Atlanta is kind of priced accordingly, there's 60-point upside out of some of these guys. I know DeJounte Murray has been pretty terrible, but at 8,700, if the guy goes for 50, he's going to break the slate or whatever he is. And, we obviously know Trae Young can get hot. So I think Atlanta is a pivotal piece of this slate for a GPP perspective. And let's see. I like your Şengün call. I think that Houston-Sacramento game without Kevin Porter Jr. I wish Eric Gordon was a little cheaper on FanDuel. Don't know what his ceiling is, but there are definitely a bunch of guys in that game you need to target as well.
Agreed, 100%. That'll do it for this edition of the FanDuel Friday show. Dre and I are going to be back later today breaking down this weekend's NFL playoff football. So make sure you tune into that one as well. And I'm going to be back tonight with Meansy and Roth on Crunch Time, breaking down this slate. We're going to be getting some of this news. So make sure you stay tuned to that one as well. Thank you so much for joining us on behalf of myself, TJ, and Luuch, and our wonderful production team. We will talk to you later. Peace.